particularly starting from around the 18th century, which is around 1700s, you started seeing very powerful families rising up. But we also know that in the ancient times, even in Egypt, the pharaohs largely came from a particular house. And there was a bloodline of pharaohs. But in the modern history, it is in the 1700s, the 18th century, where we started seeing powerful families rising up. You started seeing the Rothschilds, you started seeing the Rockefellers, you started seeing all these families rising up in different parts of the world, particularly in Europe. In our recent history, in our time and our generation, we keep seeing powerful families rising up. When we elect governors, when we elect presidents, the US has been so used to that. I mean, Europe has been about families, but the US particularly was seen as the epitome of democracy, where anyone can become president. But since about the 1950s, the US has seen presidents coming from particular families, and they have seen alliances of families that are powerful, getting into positions of power, getting into government, becoming governors. The Bush family has had 2 presidents, and the third one running, if he's still running. They've had governors in office, and they've had many other people in their families occupying strategic positions, not only in government, but in business as well. And for those families that are very complex, they start getting into other spaces like media, like fashion. And we get dressed and we think, this is a nice outfit, but what you are wearing is a brand, and the brand belongs to a family. And that family controls perceptions, controls power, controls who gets into government. At times even controls the kinds of law that gets passed or declined. South Africa is getting into that point where we are starting to see a shift. And maybe it has always been there, but we are seeing it more obviously now. Now that we are 22, 23 years old in democracy, we are starting to see the shaping of families that occupy strategic places in our country. In government, maybe we will go into the presidency and we will start seeing families. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm talking about history. I'm talking about power. I'm talking about influence. But certainly in business it is done. In business, you can count in one hand the number of families, the Oppenheimers, the Ruperts, and some of the black families that are rising up that we know of. One person might say it is a bad thing, but somebody else will say it is what it is. Even in the Roman Catholic Church, there was a time where popes came from a particular house or a particular tribe. When we talk about God and how God blesses, it has always been the philosophy of the Church of the Holy Ghost that when God blesses a man, he blesses a man and his seed. When God blesses a woman, he blesses a woman and her field. And so that woman would marry into a family of poverty. But if her field is a blessed field, she will give birth to wealth in that family. And a man might come from a poor background, but when God has blessed his seed, he will give rise and give birth to wealth in his generation. And so when we talk about generational blessing, the very thing that as a church we look up to the Jewish people for, which God has blessed the Jewish people no matter what you say. God has blessed the Jewish people no matter where they are. Forget religion. Put aside Judaism. Judaism is an inheritance. It's a heritage. But wherever you go, wherever you are in the world, a Jewish person is a blessed person, and they know it. Even in their poverty, they still know that they have the promise and the blessing of Abraham in their lives. And they are proud of that. Even the non-religious Jews know very well who they are. Even the non-religious Jews, they know very well who they are and where they come from. But what the opposition, I don't want to call the devil out, but the opposition has always been about is, if I can confuse your identity, and if I can confuse your heritage, and if I can destroy your base, which is your family and your house, I know Uguti, when I destroy your house, let me make a simple example. Some of you have been wondering, why is this man so pedantic and so obsessed about marriage and fighting against divorce? It is because I know what he is after. It is not about you and your love and the love that has been lost. It is about your generation and the next generation and the next generation and the generation after. And so when we can, and as much as we can, we stand firm. But we stand firm because we know Uguti, if it has been ordained by God, there is a promise upon which the hope of generation sits. And what he is after is destroying the family, and by destroying the family, there is no pride in the house. By destroying the family, there is no pride in the house. You see, in one house, you've got many families. In one house, you've got branches of the family coming out. And so he may kill one family there, but the house still stands. And he kills the next family there, but the house still stands. The Kennedys, if you look at the Kennedys in the US, he killed families. The house stood until the house could not stand any longer. The Kennedys are disappearing, at least in the public eye. And so it is not about one family, but it is about a house. And when Joshua says, if it is evil in your eyes to serve God, choose today who you want to serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Amen. And when we trace back where Joshua comes from, Joshua comes from the house of Ephraim. And Ephraim comes from Joseph. And Joseph comes from Jacob. And they have the blessing of God. In fact, we know out of Joseph, there were two streams. There was the house of Ephraim and the house of Manasseh. And Joshua comes from the house of Ephraim. And Ephraim, uJoseph eletha abantwana esemdala uJakob ukuthi azobabusisa uthi obani laba uthi abantwana baba bafana ngibalethe ukubabusisa uthi oh basondeze uma babeka kuyena ukuthi uJakobe waphambanisa izandla wabeka esokudla phezulu kaEphraim wabeka esokunxele phezulu komdala uManase wase yababusisa uthi uma ebona lokhu uJosepha uthi hayi baba waba mithana efuna ukususa uthi lo omncane nangomdala uthi ngiyakwazi engikwenzayo yebo naye lo uzoba mkhulu kodwa lo uyozala amakhosi. And that's where Joshua comes from. And so when Joshua has this conviction and he says, but as for me and my house, he says, I know where I come from. I know the cloth from which I was cut. I know whose I am. And I know the promise and the seed that I carry. As for me and my house, God, only God, remains our hope, and we will serve him. Ukuthula bandla elingcwele. Ukuthula kubazalwane.